The end of Warcraft. That's right, or is it just the beginning? I'm not sure. This is from Platinum WoW here, and there's nothing else to this video other than that. I have no idea what this is about. We see Xal'atath here lying in a pool of blood, what looks like, in the ruins of Dalaran. I don't know what any of this is about, but Platinum WoW usually pumps out great content, so let's see what's going on here and what the end of WoW is all about here. Let's jump into this.
13 years ago, one of the most brutal events in Warcraft took place. During the peak of the faction conflict between the Horde and the Alliance in Mist of Pandaria, Garrosh Hellscream made sure to sow hatred between the two factions in the neutral city of Dalaran.
That's right.
Tensions were already high between the sub-factions in the city.
Well, he didn't just manage to sow, problems. He freaking nuked an Alliance city, so... there was kind of some justification to a little bit of the anger, right?
The Silver Covenant and the Sun Reavers represented the Alliance and the Horde, but High Elves and Blood Elves weren't always opposed to each other, because... Before the Burning Crusade, the High Elves left the elven city of Quotha because their prince, who was a bad guy, was teaching the citizens how to suck magic from living things to satiate their addiction. But if they didn't satiate their addiction, they wouldn't die. They were just addicts, and the High Elves thought that was messed up, so they left. But physically, there's no difference between Blood Elves and High Elves other than their eyes, and also they have cultural differences. But ignore everything I just said, because Varisa and other High Elves left Quotha for totally different reasons after the Second War, because Quotha dropped out of the Alliance, but Varisa and the other High Elves...
By the way, can I just say this is an old piece of art? This right here, this is quintessential Death Knight. Look at this thing. This is old art. We're talking like Lordaeron, old stuff. I don't know who the artist was that drew this. This is official World of Warcraft art. This right here, this is a freaking Death Knight. Look at that, man. That is some badassery on a whole nother level.
After the Second War, because Quotha dropped out of the Alliance, but Varisa and the other High Elves wanted to stay in the Alliance because we need High Elf units for humans in Warcraft 3. Okay, so the Sunwell. Quotha had this thing called the Sunwell, but that was destroyed during the invasion of Quotha. But it was different from the Sunwell that was reinvigorated at the end of the Burning Crusade. No. This version of the Sunwell actually had different magic, and it actually came from a different well called the Well of Eternity. But that well doesn't exist anymore because of an event that happened 10,000 years ago during the War of the Ancients, which is also a book series, and the first two books of the series came out before World of Warcraft even released.
Okay, he's speed running the lore right now. I'm gonna tell you guys, if you're a bit lost, it's not your fault. He is speed running this shit. But basically, he's going through all of the elven lore from High Elves to Blood Elves, even back to Night Elves now, talking about all the wells. The Well of Eternity, we got the Sun Well now, and everything that's happened to them. Tons of elven lore are quintessential core to World of Warcraft lore. So I think that's basically what he's doing here, is he's trying to get through all of that to get to whatever the point is of this video.
But this book series, it's super important because it lays out the events leading to the world-altering event called the Sundering, and oh my God, I'm talking about the Sundering again.
It's important.
You know what? No, I'm done with this Warcraft lore bullshit. Instead of telling you about the Sundering, I'm just gonna play every single time I've talked about the Sundering on this channel at once, because I just can't be bothered anymore.
The man's broken. I mean, to be fair, he's done a lot on it. It's an important event. It literally shaped the entire world of Azeroth, right? All the continents and everything, the way they currently out is because of the Sundering. That's why Kalimdor is where it is. That's why, Eastern Kingdoms is where it is. Northrend, Pandaria. It was all one. It's like the Pangaea of Azeroth, and then it broke apart in the Sundering.
In the Mist of Pandaria, a questline called the Purging of Dalaran took place. An event where the Sun Reavers were slaughtered or exiled from the city by the Silver Covenant. And it wasn't until midnight, 13 years later, that this storyline was revisited and met its conclusion. But for this questline to make any sense or have any emotional impact on the player, they need the required context to know all of this in a questline from 13 years ago. I really want to stress that. 13 years ago.
That's a lot.
I was 13 years ago. Yeah. I was in middle school. We were all doing the Harlem Shake. During this questline, the Silver Covenant is allowed back into the city to help defeat the Void Invasion. Afterwards, they make a compromise and combine the Silver Covenant and the Sun Reavers into one singular faction called the Silver Sun Compact.
Varisa and I have decided that our people can no longer afford to fight each other.
I agree to this compact, though I will never forgive the Horde for what it has done.
As I will never forgive the Alliance for purging us from Dalaran. Yet, I too agree to this compact.
Yeah, this was a
greet the future without saying farewell to the past.
Yeah, cool line. This was an important lore moment in the game that just recently happened, and honestly, I think it should have been a cutscene or something. This was kind of like a passing part of the quest. They talked to each other, but really, this should have been like a major lore moment. And I think that's where the whole uniting of the elves kind of fell flat to a lot of people. I don't know. I think we needed more cutscenes involved in it, more drama to it, and it should have been spread out over a little bit longer in terms of timing. It just felt very quick and rushed, and like a lot of it felt like it happened almost off screen. And we were just showing up to catch the end of conversations. It felt too rushed. Yeah, that's what it was. It definitely felt rushed, especially given the history of it all. Like, these problems have existed for what is it, centuries? And then all of a sudden they're united in a offhand quest chain that just kind of happens mostly off screen. Yeah, it did feel kind of weird. And like this moment right here is huge. We're talking about a compact between two factions that have hated each other forever. And it just needed, I think, he created this little cinematic cutscene right here that we're watching now. This is probably what we should have gotten in the game.
But why? Why is Blizzard taking the narrative in this direction? What is this? World of Friendship craft? No! To understand why the narrative is being taken in this direction, we need to talk about the massive obstacle that is in the way of Warcraft telling good stories. For a majority of World of Warcraft's history,
that's a good story
its
right
lore
there.
has been unfocused. Each expansion has been wildly different in subject matter, with only the faintest connections between each bombastic, disconnected continuation of its story. But with this scattershot approach comes a wide breadth of lore that is required to understand when topics are reintroduced with an expansion's worth of lore that separate the start and end of a character's story.
I mean, Blizzard's done a little bit of a better job when it comes to story. Thank you for the follow. When it comes to the story overall, because they do some, like, there's some continuation from expansion to expansion. If you were here from the very beginning, I mean, from Vanilla into Burning Crusade into Wrath of the Lich King, there was no real connection between those storylines. It was like, oh, all of a sudden, new bad guy has emerged, and now we got to take care of that problem. And then it was really Mists of Pandaria. From there, the Garrosh storyline shoehorned into WoD, which then continued on from there, and basically you had then Cataclysm. Everything else kind of just worked its way together. There was a continuation of the story, at least through a small thread. Sometimes it wasn't the best connection, but there was a thread that kind of was supposed to connect expansion to expansion from there on out, and the story continued. Now, was it always the best story? No. I mean, I still question why we even went to Shadowlands at this point, but really it was, they were trying to make the story more, I don't know, they had more have a more realistic flow from expansion to expansion rather than insert new bad guy just busted out of the ground and now it's time to fight him.
The only realistic way for a new or casual player to understand the story is either read a collection of 4 history books explaining the entire universe.
Technically, the Cataclysm story carried all the way through BFA. I mean, really, it carried even to, you could skip Shadowlands, it carried into Dragonflight even. So yeah, you're right. I mean, really, Cataclysm was kind of the one that started it, but yeah, you got Mists of Pandaria, the Garrosh story, and then that continued on from there.
Read the wiki, or go watch a video explaining the lore on YouTube. This disjointed approach in World of Warcraft can also be seen in the game's design. Features for expansions were built, iterated, and ultimately scrapped over and over again. Garrisons, artifact weapons, war fronts, the Heart of Azeroth, and covenants all met their inevitable end once the next expansion was released. It wasn't until Dragonflight when we saw a philosophical shift in the game's design. Instead of a flashy new feature built for one expansion and one expansion only, there was an investment in the core fundamentals of World of Warcraft's design.
And I say this all the time, Dragonflight was a new foundation. It was almost like a WoW 2. I mean, some people say Cataclysm was WoW 2, so I guess this would be WoW 3 at this point. But it was the new foundation for what they wanted to build the World Soul Saga off. People say, well, you know, War Within is the start of the World Soul Saga. Really, it was Dragonflight. Dragonflight is technically the start of the World Soul Saga, and really what it is, it's the foundation that the next 3 expansions are built on. And that's why right now, if you make a new character, they kick you off with Dragonflight. That's the expansion you play to start. And that's because it makes sense story-wise and foundationally that's where you're going to head into the World Soul Saga from. So really, this Dragonflight's story was, isn't that right? You know, it wasn't the greatest. But mechanically and the way they laid out the talent system and crafting and everything else and flying, it was good. It was a good expansion, and I played all the way through it. I enjoyed Dragonflight.
Since then, we've seen features like dynamic flying, talent trees, professions, auction house revamp, cross-faction gameplay, warbands, delves, UI changes, and most impactful of all, housing. A massive core pillar of gameplay being introduced in Midnight. World of Warcraft is currently being made with the goal of setting the MMO up for success for the next 20 years. And the same thing is happening to the game's lore, which is desperately trying to recover from the sins of its past.
Yeah.
Because from 2014 to 2020, the A-plot of World of Warcraft has kind of been a hot mess. And the peaks and valleys of the game's lore is directly correlated to the juggling of creative directors World of Warcraft has been fumbling through.
True.
The creative director for World of Warcraft from 2004 to 2016 was Chris Metzen, the artistic mind that founded Warcraft.
Badassery.
He would step down from his leadership role in 2016 after being burnt out having to manage World of Warcraft, the Warcraft movie, and the failed Project Titan. The last thing Chris
Those are scenes from the WoW movie site. Man, this movie had potential. Look at the Kobolds poster and stuff. It really did have potential. And they spent money on it. It's kind of unfortunate. I just think they tried to do too much storytelling in one short movie, like the orc side and the human side and everything. It probably should have just been like a Wrath of the Lich King storyline, and people would have, understood that more. And it would have been more mainstream for people who don't even play WoW. But they tried. I think it's an all right movie. I just get why it's not fully mainstream. It didn't really blow up. They told the wrong story.
Thing
yeah,
Chris
I
was
think
involved
so.
in was the Legion expansion and the cinematic for Battle for Azeroth. Creative director Alex Afasarabi took Chris's place of a leadership role in 2016. Afasarabi was allegedly known to be very proud of treating every WoW expansion like it was the last WoW expansion, which is great, until you have to make the next WoW expansion.
Right.
Furthermore, he was allegedly the leading voice in pushing the Burning of Teldrassil event in the Battle for Azeroth.
Really?
Much to the distaste of the rest of the narrative team. Despite his push for this story beat,
I didn't know he was the one responsible for this. Yeah, this was not the best idea. It could have been executed correctly, but looking back on it, it just makes no sense still. It doesn't. What's up, Doc? It makes no sense because at the end of the day, like Sylvanas' entire actions, was she feeding souls to the Maw? Really? She was willing to burn down the entirety of Teldrassil and then we forgave her after that? It's just weird. The whole thing just felt like it hit weird.
he had no idea what the conclusion of the Burning of Teldrassil or Sylvanas' story would be.
He just didn't finish it out. Like it broke her character and then he didn't finish it. Okay, you want to do something that dramatic, finish it out. He's like, oh, here's the tip. Just kidding. Pulled it back out. We're going to figure this out now. I can explain. And really, you can't explain that. She freaking committed genocide. How do you explain that? How do you redeem her? I don't even know. But we're just going to have to.
He would later be quietly fired from Blizzard June of 2020 for sexual misconduct. Steve Denuser, a fellow narrative designer, needs to find a way to continue this story he just inherited.
Yeah, Steve
Shadowlands
Denuser
comes out and its lore is heavily criticized by the player base. November 28th, 2022, the Dragonflight expansion.
Snoozer is what we call him. Man, that guy put the lore to sleep. Jesus Christ. He really fucked it up. And he was I don't know if you guys know this, he was a big Nathanos fan, which makes me think that Steve Denuser is like the biggest simp around because Nathanos is just a simp-ass bitch. Where is he even? Didn't he die to like join Sylvanas in the afterlife? Is he still there? Just fucking around? I mean, Sylvanas has been freeing souls in the Maw now for like, what is it in the terms of lore? 5-6 years? And he's just sitting down there, waiting to be found? What a bitch he turned out to be. And that was one of, like, Steve Denuzer's favorite guys, so I don't know.
Comes out, and its story's a good refresher, but still has some issues. December 15th, 2022. Chris Metzen comes back as a creative advisor for World of Warcraft. When Chris rejoined, the team was already 10 months into the development of The War Within. During his time as an advisor, he takes a look at the story plans of WoW for the next 2 expansions. And he doesn't like what he sees.
Yeah. I think we never got the full story from Chris Metzen in terms of how much he didn't like what he saw. Because I really think part of the reason why he didn't stay retired is because of how bad he thought things had gotten with the story. I think if the story was heading in the great direction, I don't know if he ever would have came back, honestly. Maybe he would have, like, in a more minor role, but the role he's taken on post-retirement is, like, right back into the thick of shit. And I don't think he would have done that if he didn't think it was bad. I don't think he liked where things went at all in Shadowlands. And he just felt like, shit, I got to fix this. And he was like, yeah, like I said before, I've kind of done this whole skit where he's like, I got to fix this. And it's so bad, I need 3 expansions to get this shit fixed. And to figure out how the hell I'm going to turn this back around. And that's what he's doing now.
What he sees. In an interview with Bobby Kotick, former CEO of Activision Blizzard, he tells a story of when Chris Metzen returned to Blizzard and took a look at the planned story for World of Warcraft.
He calls me, he had seen like the 2 expansion plans, and he called me, he's like, they're not good, man. They need to be redone. And I'm like, just come do it. Like, you're the guy, come do it.
September 26th, 2022.
I mean, if we, Bobby Kotick and all of his shit that he's done and all the yachts he's bought off of fucking, monetizing the shit out of this game, we could at least say, I guess he made that call right. Right? At least he told Chris Metzen, hey, come back, man, fix this shit. He didn't tell him, F off, we got this or something. He knew. At least he knew.
Chris Metzen fully rejoins Blizzard as the executive creative director.
Bobby Small.
Then in the fall of 2023, Steve Denuser quietly leaves Blizzard, stating that it was because of the work-from-home policy at Blizzard being restricted and that he's looking for a change. BlizzCon 2023. Chris Metzen announces the World Soul Saga, a trilogy of expansions with a cohesive story that will not only close this chapter of the past 20 years of Warcraft's story, but set the universe up for the next 20 years.
A storyline that in almost every way feels like the culmination of the first 20 years of our storytelling.
What's up, Warden?
A storyline, provided we do our jobs, we do the thing that will vector us into the next 20 years of adventure.
Right. But listening to him say that does make me think that The Last Titan is kind of a closing of the book of World of Warcraft and an opening of whatever World of Warcraft's going to be going forward. It does. It's pretty hyped, I'm not going to lie, the way he delivers this. But it definitely seems like these 3 expansions were not just meant to correct the storyline, but were meant to set the storyline up kind of in a flat, all of these stories are closed. We dealt with the Titans. We dealt with the Void. Everything's resetting. Maybe we go back to a, fresh start. I don't know. Guild Wars 3 is doing it. Right? They're doing fresh start. That's what they go in prequel in that. So maybe we get, hey, back to the grassroots of Elwyn Forest, back to the old days, dealing with the gnolls. I don't know how you do it, but it definitely feels like he's trying to blast everything and reforge it into a flat piece of land for them to start all over again after The Last Titan.
How is that?
Because where do you go after you deal with the Void Lords and the Titans? I mean, what the hell? What cosmic force is more than that? Are we really just going to power creep up to beyond that? I don't think so. I think we get kind of a reset after this.
Possible. How can the World Soul Saga vector Warcraft into the next
Preach said it would
20
happen,
years of
did he?
adventure? And how is this trilogy different from every other expansion? The aftermath of whatever's waiting for us at the end of the World Soul Saga is what I believe to be a soft reboot for the universe. But
Yeah, I think
before
so,
they
too.
do that, Blizzard needs to wind up a haymaker punch of story decisions that is going to take years to make contact.
That's what this
And
World
really,
Soul Saga is.
since Dragonflight, they've been concluding storylines and setting them up with an established baseline to cleanly introduce future lore that isn't mired in ancient context from past expansions. There's the reclamation of Gilneas, the retirement of Gen Greymane, and his daughter Tess becoming the new leader, the World Tree of Belemeth, Tyrande and Malfurion retiring, and Chandris being the new leader.
Yeah.
Caligos reuniting the Blue Dragonflight, Magni not being Azeroth's speaker anymore, killing off Gallywix and establishing the Undermine Council, the Kirin Tor becoming a decentralized faction, finally establishing a connection between brokers and ethereals, addressing the true nature of the Shadowlands, uncovering the Titan conspiracy and their plans for Azeroth, introducing new characters like Dagran and Eretor, establishing new threats like the Arathi Empire. And probably the most important storyline is the reunification of elves and the creation of the Dawnwell. Because the lore surrounding the elves in Quel'Thalas is the longest run-on sentence of lore in the universe that needed to return back to a status quo so future stories can be told which don't rely on the context of decades of fragmented lore. All a new player needs to understand now is that in the northern eastern kingdoms, there's a place called Quel'Thalas. It's filled with magical elves. There are a couple different types of them with different cultures, and that's it. You don't need to know what happened in the Burning Crusade, or the Mists of Pandaria, or the Battle for Azeroth. This is a fresh slate that stories can be built upon. And that isn't to say this is an erasure of Warcraft's story.
Cluza, hey Sam, love your YouTube videos. Thank you, appreciate that. I definitely think that this is like I said, it's like you blow it all apart and you reforge it into a flat piece of land ready to be told from the very beginning. I think any new player who starts the game post Last Titan, whatever that expansion is called, that's going to become the foundational expansion that new players started. So when we're like 2-3 expansions out of the Last Titan, when a new player makes a character, he's going to start at whatever that post Last Titan expansion is, because that story is going to lay the foundation going forward for everything else that happens after the Last Titan. The Last Titan is a closing for all the WoW oldies. That's what it's going to be. And anybody who still wants to play the old WoW shit, they can go play Classic Plus, because that's also going to be a thing going forward. And then WoW 2 or WoW, whatever you want to call it, is going to be whatever comes out post Last Titan.
This is an attempt to finally put some punctuation at the end of these run-on sentences. And if Warcraft is going to have a well-told story, it needs to build a foundation for these new stories to be told.
We cannot greet the future without saying farewell to the past.
Hey, maybe that line means more than just something he's talking about. Maybe he's talking about WoW lore going forward. You never know. Yeah, Cluza's definitely a bot, for sure. Nobody compliments me.
Past.
You guys are right. Just messing.
Now, what I'm not saying is that the story of the reunification of the elves and the cinematics that come with it are some master art of storytelling, because it's really not. What I'm saying is that from a holistic point of view, this shows that WoW's writers have diagnosed one of the major pain points for this legacy universe and are taking steps to rectify it, and that there's a clear long-term investment for the franchise, which can currently be seen in every facet of the game's design, from gameplay to story. In 2008, World of Warcraft Comic Volume 1 was released. This collection of Warcraft comics included a foreword from Chris Metzen talking about how his love for comics heavily influenced the Warcraft universe. While Warcraft is a high-octane swords and sorcery setting, I don't think it's any secret that its unique flavor is steeped heavily in comics lore. It's absolutely saturated by the colorful themes and motifs that continually play out in the complex yet glorious universes inhabited by our favorite spandex-clad heroes. I know. You might be wondering what magical broadswords and demon-forged Fel Reavers have to do with secret identities and skin-tight costumes. A few examples pop into mind. Chris goes on to talk about how Captain America was the inspiration for the vibe of Warcraft Paladins. Alex Ross's mythical renderings of Superman in Kingdom Come and Justice influenced the Draenei's heroic poses and animation sets. The dreaming from
I didn't know
Sandman
this.
and the green from the Swamp Thing help shape the lore of the Emerald Dream.
Oh, wow.
But the most impactful comic book inspiration for Warcraft was The Mighty Thor by Walt Simonson and Saul Buscema. He goes on to mention that the Burning Legion and Sargeras are just riffs off the demon Surtur and Muspelheim, and Thrall's Doomhammer is just heavily inspired
Yeah, he's
by
Thanos.
Mjolnir. The very foundation of Warcraft's lore is soaked in inspiration from comics, but the similarities between the two go even farther than that. Legacy comics develop into incredibly long-running mediums of storytelling. For these stories to be sustainable, they practically require resets for its story, or it will be suffocated in information that make them impossible to get into.
Right.
For DC Universe, they implement entire resets to their universe frequently. For Marvel, they section off their long-running narrative in story arcs created by specific writers. When a new arc starts, it's typically a great opportunity for new readers to pick up the series. And that right
Makes sense.
there is what WoW is working towards. Wrapping up this disconnected story that has been told for 20 years and establish a new era.
Sure.
A new era unburdened by a suffocating amount of context so that good stories can be told. And in order to
It
make
makes
this
sense. And if you want like a new generation to pick up the game, like right now, my oldest son is 8 years old. By the time the World Soul Saga finishes out, he's going to be like 10 or 11. Right? We still got another like maybe year of Midnight still to get into, and then a year and a half ish of or 2 years of the Last Titan. Right? So like say 3.5 years. Yeah, he's going to be like 10, 11 years old. 11. So, I mean, he would be primed to pick up into a game like World of Warcraft at that point if he wanted to. And picking up a game that has just started fresh for his generation would be pretty cool. It'd be a good spot for them to start, right? Fresh lore, feels like a fresh start, getting into this World of Warcraft game that Dad used to play, but it's like picking up brand new. And whatever the post-Last Titan theme or start is, that'll be what he's nostalgic for in 10 years, right? He'll be, oh man, I remember when I started WoW, and that's what they're kind of doing. They're resetting it to not only carry us, these old, decrepit, 35-plus-year-old balding men and women, into what is going to be this new generation of WoW lore, where a new generation can pick up and start playing too.
a reality, the World Soul Saga has awkward, ugly moments where it's trying to wrap up the remnants of legacy lore to set the universe up for success in the long.
Look, all of you are like, oh, I'm not balding. Sam, that's your problem. You're the one balding. Your souls are balding, okay? At the end of the day, if you play WoW, I don't care if you're actually losing hair follicles or not. Your soul is balding from playing this game, okay? We'll stick with that.
Term. And it's not perfect in the slightest, but it shows that Blizzard has diagnosed these major pain points with Warcraft's story and are taking major swings to help rectify them.
My hope, our dear hope, is that you can see when it comes to WoW storytelling, we ain't screwing around. We are playing for all the marbles. We are working to establish a thundering heartbeat for this franchise.
But Metzen, what about the sword and Silphus?
I want to see. That's freaking hilarious. He made it sound like he's asking that question. I want to hear the answer to this, but before I do, Avrind in chat said, what do you think is more important to the future of WoW? The stuff after The Last Titan or Classic Plus? I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think it's both. I think Classic Plus will be a great place for a lot of, nostalgic WoW players to play through the old content if that's what they miss, but it also allows Blizzard to be a little bit more, wild with the retail version of the game, right? They're like, okay, we got Classic Plus. That's the version of the game that if people love it, they can go do that. We don't have to be handicapped anymore by worrying about catering to those people. We can take World of Warcraft retail version wherever we want now. So I think both. I think if you have both doing well, that's going to be great for the game. I think they allow each other to both thrive.
Please! We're halfway through the saga. It hasn't been talked about at all. Anything?
What was that? Doesn't matter.
What was that? Doesn't matter. Yeah, seriously, how are we halfway through? We haven't addressed the sword yet. It's ridiculous. But anyways, great video from from Platinum WoW overall. Love these. And yeah, the future of WoW, it's happening. We're living in it. We're seeing the foundation poured for what's going to happen going forward. And I'm kind of excited for it. Bit of a big time reset coming, and I'm still excited for the Last Titan and what we do there. I think it'll all be cool. We'll see what happens. Metzen at the helm. We'll see how they execute it. Nice video from Platinum WoW.